The things that have always been the best subjects for me, or that I felt had yielded the best work, were the things that I felt most urgently. I've been on and off doing paintings of the ocean for probably 20 years or so. As soon as I felt like I was competent enough to give shape to something that was believable enough to say what I wanted to say, which was oftentimes very ambiguous. Like a lot of the things that I've made throughout my career, I find is a curious relationship between the discipline and practice of painting, of the actual technical part of making paintings, and my inner life, which tends to produce the images rather like dreams produce images for us, sometimes when we need them, sometimes as a therapy for what we're going through in our lives. But I found that the stormy seas, especially recently, have kept surfacing in my sketchbooks and when I'm thinking about making a painting, oftentimes I'm sitting with a sketchbook, making little images, and the images that were appearing were of these wave patterns. Sort of like, to be honest, years ago, I was really captivated with Hokusai and Hiroshige's wave paintings. And I just longed for that kind of graphic simplicity somehow, but I was too deeply immured in descriptive quasi-realism to go that far. But the reason that I think was attracted to them was because they are an example of a kind of metaphor expressing what could be many things at many levels of a kind of destabilized world. And trying to create something positive out of it led me to the idea of survivors. Just think, in the story I'm painting here, these people survive. That's how I'm imagining it. So hence the survivor title. The more I struggled with trying to represent it, every time I went out onto the water, and every time I go out still, the water tends to become a little bit clearer, a little bit more objectified as a series of possibilities for representation. I rely on trusting that kind of, whatever that is, that wherever that proscenium is, where all these things happen in the mind, the imaginative mind and the dream mind, is the source of everything that comes out onto the canvases. That is the postage stamp size beginnings of a painting, basically. And practically speaking, because I've been painting a long time, when I look at the bone structure that's present on an image that's as small as this card, I can sort of have a sense of imagining that at a certain scale. The painting that at least in the pictures it looks like is at the end of the wall in the current show, the Last Resort. That was a painting that had been in the studio for a long time. It wasn't quite finished in time for a previous show of similar imagery, and I worked on that probably longer than any painting that I've ever worked on, which was over a period of several months on and off. I would go back in and I would notice something that I thought, well, that needs a little modification. And a large painting has that capacity to you can interact with this larger surface and find new things in it. I find over a long period of time, if that in fact is a captivating process. So with the smaller studies, sometimes the immediacy of that and the gesture that's present in that very small scale, which happens very quickly, ends up being a real challenge to imagine on a larger scale and to figure out how to create or recreate a similar kind of energy and power without simply feeling like repeating yourself. As I approach every single surface, I think I do approach it as a unique opportunity to discover something. Where do ideas come from? This is one of my great fascinations. Where do ideas come from? Why do they come? I feel like there's this other world out there or within that is so rich and so densely textured with meaning. The connection between the tiniest and the largest and the meanings of them are all one of the source of great fascination still for me.